I'd like to show you the way I glue the last tubes of the second row. The tubes stick out like a hedgehog, and it looks like some mess. But if you take a more thorough look, you will notice that all the pink tubes lie above the brown ones. Besides, there is one pink tube behind each pole. There is no pink tube behind this and that pole. Look what I do. I bend the brown tube downward. The pink tube is supposed to lie onto it. Pull these tubes rightward a little to prevent them from interfering. Lift this brown tube, and now it is evident that I have to insert a pink tube right here. I glue a tube here like this. Insert it. Here it lies in front of a pole and behind the following one. It lies right onto the brown tube. Now we are going to attach the last tube. Bend this brown tube downward. Let's distribute these tubes a little to keep them from interfering. This tube goes up, and we attach the last pink tube here. It is far from being convenient, but it is the last tube. It is where we insert it. All the pink tubes are above, so leave them a little. Lead the tube in front of the first pole and behind the last one. That's all. The row is finished completely. So, these were the first two rows, the most complicated ones, because we have to attach additional tubes. Let me tell you once again that I used dragon glue because we are going to pull the tubes tight afterwards to make the pattern denser. That's why we have to use strong and reliable glue. School glue is not appropriate in our case. Look, the tubes were bending leftward while we were moving rightward. Now we are going to perform the third row. The third and the rest of the rows are quite similar to the first two. The difference is that the first two rows we were inserting tubes, while in the rest of the rows we are going just to weave. You may start with any tube. I'm going to weave with brown tubes. My brown tubes are bent rightward. It means I'm going to move leftward. How is it supposed to lie? Look, here my tube goes in front of one pole, behind the second one. That's all, I've laid it. Bend the tubes like this to make it easier. Bend the pink tube forward like this. Now I'm going to lay a brown tube onto it. Look, in front of one, behind the second. That's all. Continue. Bend the pink tube like this again. In front of one pole, behind the next one. We are moving leftward. As a result, the third row is going to be woven with brown tubes. Like this, lay the tube. Here is our interlacing. All the tubes lie above. Continue moving. I'm going to turn the desk now. Here is my tube in front of one pole, behind the next one. Bend the pink tube down to keep them from interfering. In front of one pole, behind the following. You may pull the tubes a little tighter, but not too hard to avoid the tubes falling out. Here we are reaching the end of the third row where the brown tubes are above. Here they are. And here. There are only two last poles left. Find our tube. The pink tube goes down. The brown one goes in front of one pole, behind the next one. Bend it down as well. And the last tube. I bend the pink tube like this. As for the brown one, it goes in front of one pole, behind the following one. That's all. All the brown tubes are above, the pink ones are beneath. We were moving leftward and directing the tubes rightward. The fourth row is supposed to be woven with pink tubes. We are going to direct them leftward and move rightward. Take any tube, for example this one. Look, here it is. I lead it in front of one pole, behind the next one. Kind of close this tube. Again. In front of one pole, behind the next one. Place onto the brown tube. Now when the pattern is getting clearly seen, you'd better start tightening tubes, because afterwards it will be too difficult to pull them. I've tightened the brown tube, laid it. Now I take the pink tube and place it onto the brown one. The next brown tube. Pull it like this and bend downward. The pink tube goes in front of one pole, behind the following one. Actually, it is almost impossible to confuse the pattern. Pull the brown tubes again like this. It goes the same with tubes at the poles. Look, here is a pink tube. I lead it in front of one brown tube, behind the next one. A tube always goes in front of one pole, behind the following one. The next one, pull as usual, lay. The pink tube goes in front of one pole, behind the second one. I'm moving rightward. Let me show you. The 4 rows of the fishbone are clearly seen already. Surely it is too long to weave all the rows in order to shoot the tutorial. So I'm planning to finish the article in the same way, to make brown tubes and to a brown 3-tube rope. How do I finish? Well, let's say this row is the last one. What do? I just glue the tubes again. Let me show you. Here is a pink tube and here is a brown one. A pink one is behind a brown one. Unite a brown tube with a pink one. And glue pole right here. I glue this very point. After which I cut the tubes and weave a rope with 3 tubes. Now a pink tube is in front, but I'll have to use a brown tube as the front one. When the article is finished, you will see everything. Well, that's all. Actually, the pattern is rather simple. It is quite easy to weave. But please don't forget to tighten the tubes, otherwise the weaving will be too loose. Lay the brown tube, place the pink one right above it. If you have to weave a big article, lengthen the tube somewhere behind the poles and weave as much as required. As a matter of fact, it is a kind of layer-wise weave performed in 2 opposite directions. But for such detailed explanation it would be hardly understood. Look once again. You pull this tube tight, bend it here and place the pink tube over it. Everything is rather simple. Repeat all the same actions every time. Now here are all the pink tubes. The next row is going to consist of all brown tubes. Thanks a lot to all of you. I will be very grateful if any of you make an article with the fishbone pattern as well and show it to us. Everything's rather simple and I'm always happy when you like my patterns and repeat them. Good luck to you, all the best, see you!